What's going on, everybody? Sam back here again with another episode of the Scale Labs RC podcast. And tonight we have arguably one of the episodes that I have been waiting the longest on ever since I knew it was a possibility because this is a guy that he doesn't even know that I look up to him, but I look up to him for several reasons. But he is an innovator. He is somebody who has directly impacted our hobby that we love so much, and has one of the biggest roles in doing that. So, without further ado, Mr. Arnie Fie, how are we doing, sir?
Hey, good evening. Hoping these
What's
storms on your end keep the power on.
Yeah, no kidding. If we lose power, there's a weird cut. Yeah, something weird happened. So, but hopefully not. I think I heard the last thunderstorm here, or thunder or crack of lightning here in the last 15 minutes. So should be good.
Yeah, either that or it's the spirits, hitting me because I've, broken my Amish ways with social media. For
Yep.
those who, yeah, so that could be it too.
We're gonna have to put some kind of cover over this, like you're breaking your silence or breaking the silence or something like that. So
Yeah, my last Facebook post I think was I know who it was. It was Steve Salva's Snowbirds, and I think it was 2010. But it was also my first Facebook post. So don't look for any more or anything soon. That's for sure.
yeah, absolutely. And that's funny you bring up Steve because I got to meet both Steve and his brother at when we ran the Rumble race over in Delavan, Illinois. Got
Okay.
to meet those guys for the first time, and that was cool. They were doing their like, you know, road show down from Canada all the way down to Chili Bowl, and I think they even went from Chili Bowl all the way down to like Florida and raced and
Yeah,
stuff. So that was pretty cool.
absolutely. They've been doing that on the tail end of their career. Eric's retired. Steve's semi-retired, but they're both working. Like Eric was crew chiefing some kind of pavement car in Canada, and then now Steve has taken I don't want to call it a half retirement role, but a full-time role with Canadian NASCAR as I think series director. So those guys are racers. Their dad is a racer. You go up in Quebec and talk about the Salvases. You're certainly with folks, real car to RC car. It's all the same up there.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's they seem like pretty cool dudes. I didn't get a chance to talk to them very much, but they seem like, and then they would get all passionate about something. They'd start speaking French, and we'd all look at them like, "Oh, they must be. They're either happy or really upset right now." So I'm
Well,
not sure which one.
as if anybody remembers Todd Putnam, he would always say, if you hear him say "la la loo" somewhere in that, they know they're cussing you. So that's how you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, man, I don't even know where to start. You've got such a historic. I feel like ages you too much, but you've got such a historic career in the RC game and specifically dirt oval. But I know you've done more than just dirt oval, and man, I don't even know where to start. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the ball in your court, and if you can
Okay.
go back as far as you can remember and give us a timeline up to the
Oh,
current day, and then we can kind of talk all about it.
as far as I can remember, I mean, folks, you try to think of things that you've done in your life. And I know the first time I went racing, I remember everything about it. It was the last week of February, 1998. No, I'm sorry, 1988. Sorry. Um, it was a Blackfoot with the cursed bevel gears. I know the retro kits, they fixed these things, but kids, you didn't, they used to strip out like crazy. Um, the plastic type tires, carpet track. Uh, you get to the track and you learn about your first Lexan body. Proline tires, were there. And I mean, and the unforgettable stench of Paragon. And I remember my first races, you're constantly looking back and forth with your eyes and you're just racing, you're just learning this RC thing. And I remember my eyes would hurt, the muscles around it. And it was like you didn't care. You waited and at the time it was 18, 20 heats in a round. I mean, it was jam packed. So this was Newcastle, Delaware, near where I grew up. And I remember everything about it. The week after, or 2 weeks after, is my birthday. So I got a set of tires, a Lexan body, and a Joel Magic Johnson stock motor. And let me tell you, That was the most tents I ever picked up from a stock Blackfoot to that. But I never missed a weekend of racing from that day forward for a year and a half. There was a wedding. I don't remember who. I just remember not going, and I remember not liking it. And that is by far my furthest back RC racing memories. I can remember a couple RC cars before that, like Nico cars, whatever. But um, it all started because my uncle came over to my house, and he he came over. He worked for my dad. He needed to borrow a couple things, and he was like, "Hey, did you see that RC track that's up at the Square Mall?" And my parents hadn't had time to get me up there, and I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "You want to go up there and race tonight?" I was like, "Well, yeah, but the wire on my battery come unsoldered, and I don't even know what solder is at the time." Like he's like, "Oh, I got a soldering gun," and I mean, I'm sitting there going, "What's a gun got to do with fixing my wire?" But I just surrendered to Uncle John. If you're gonna fix my battery, I'll go with you, and you fix my battery, and we'll go race, and we'll just do this racing thing and try it out. And he fixed the battery, and then we went to the track, and I can easily say I've averaged at least one race a week since 1988, without a doubt. I
Wow.
never, I can't remember taking more than 4 months off one time, just life things or whatever. But I mean, but even still with that, oh my gosh, you add up every day you're at a race, at a big race, and all that. It's easy. It's easily over a day a week since for almost what 38 years.
Wow, incredible. When you're getting started there, when is the first time you remember? Obviously, you have a memory of the first time you ever raced, but when is the first time you have a solid memory of having success at the racetrack?
Hmm. King cab. To me, a king cab because it kicked the Blackfoot's rear end. First of all, you had actual A arms to work with. And there was a big quarter flash for the dinosaurs out there was a stock motor maker, and they sponsored a race at the track. And truck is a very big class, so stock truck. So I finished third with a king cab. Now this is when the RC10 era started, so there was RC10 conversion trucks, and to be out there with I'll call them Tupperware cars. Now they're Traxxas, and they're still good for racing. But I'm out there with my Tupperware car and finished third. So, and I mean, there must have been. I think I'm going to say there's at least 40, 50 entries in the class. Like, there was no gimmies to it. So that's the first time I remember coming home with a trophy, and it was like, you earned it, you worked for it. And it's like the next thing you looked at was it said third, after about a month, and you're like, well, damn it, now I got to fix that three.
Yep,
So yeah.
absolutely. So what age would that have been roughly?
Oh, good Lord. Now you asked me to do math again. 13.
13.
Yeah. So
Very nice.
90 somewhere. I'd say first year or so I just spent back, clanking off the wall. I know I've got a tree of ribbons back at my parents' house, and so I put the ribbon on a wire every week. So the very first outing was third place in C main for production truck. The first blue ribbon came, I think, it was about a half a year. It was about 6 months in. I was
Nice.
aiming like straight blue ribbon, not the B or the C. So I go back. I don't know why I didn't bring that. I have not brought that out of my parents' house, but I think that's a pretty cool ribbon, or this steel string of the ribbons you used to get for racing, and it's literally like a tree of here's your results for the first year and a half you're racing.
That's cool. Yeah, you put her. We'll need to get a picture of you sometime with that around your neck. You look like you just won the Kentucky Derby with look like a wreath putting around there.
It is pretty cool because I mean you got all the different colors all the way through it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of people that may not know you, I don't want to say the most interesting thing about you because I'll let you kind of tell us about that. But in my opinion, what I think most people would find incredibly interesting is your time with Customworks. So you were
Okay.
with Customworks from 2003, I believe, until 2015.
think it was 4 to 15.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Yep.
4 is when I moved down from Delaware, Pennsylvania area down to the Carolinas. Um, but yeah, I mean, as far as if to answer that question in a quick summary, that's where most folks are going to know me. I raced pan car. I grew up in the Philly area, raced a lot of pan car, when that was available then. Mid late 90s, Pennsylvania Brian Burkhart lent me one of his what we called them belly acres. They were Customworks Intimidators with stealth transmissions crammed between where the direct drive goes, and locally they just called them belly acres. So he lent me a belly acre to run at Kranzels, which could be its own story for those who know me. And that's how I started dirt oval racing. And then the Pennsylvania scene at that time. Now, granted, this is like 11th grade, 12th grade, got a driver's license, can go places. You could literally race Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night. I think Monday was the hardest night of the week to find a race, but they were all within 2 hours in that central PA area. So that's one era. Then I did run some touring car when the TC3 came out. Still raced oval, but the dirt oval started taking, how would you say, my attention the most. And then that's where I first met Tony. That's where I started meeting the dirt oval crowd. There was two different cars you ran for indoor, for Kranzels versus outdoors, but I'll go into that later. And then '04 is when the Customworks relationship began, when the Landgrafs were ready. They just didn't have time for Customworks, and it had already been quite a while that they had time for it. But also the economy and the market of racing had dipped too, so they were doing what they needed to do for a living. Post Customworks 2015 onward, I worked for 10 years Husqvarna. So if you go to Lowe's and you see all that orange equipment, I had a lot to do with that, both in terms of having it in Lowe's, its production globally, and especially the batteries. Through my 10 years at Husqvarna, I could speak pretty eloquently to anything battery related, whether it's technology, trade, um, risk, etc. And that took me into the second phase of my career, which I'm starting kind of right now. Over the last 2-3 years, I've become a forensic expert. So you go and get credentials for, like, think like arson investigation or fire and explosion, and you become a professional witness to products when they fail, for manufacturers or for insurance companies when there's a large loss. So that's my work now, as I go from the fire scene to a lab and even to the courtroom to testify on what I find in those scenarios in a very scientific way.
Wow, incredible. Yeah, that I mean, sounds like there would always be something new popping up, right? I mean, you'd never be stagnant with that type of work
Well,
with the forensic side.
no, you correct. And I mean, but this goes back to the racing, right? You gotta, there's a few things that I think they're work for life, that you gotta want to do something. And then second, you gotta be curious. It's enough to just do it and sleepwalk through it, but you gotta apply your brain to say, what about this? Or what if I did it a different way? And then use some of that rationality to say, do I want to spend my time doing this or not? But if you gotta wanna, and you got some curiosity, it'll carry you a long way. And those are the things that really matter in terms of your racing or life. That the more curious and the more you apply yourself, that's how you get faster.
Sure, absolutely. And then, so I really want to take a deep dive into your time at Customworks, and according to Nathan, there's some funny stories on how you even went about getting the job at Customworks, or getting the job up into that. So we want to talk about that as well. But
I
just
want to talk
to
about meeting Nathan. I mean, that alone was its own journey.
Okay, well, we're definitely going to cover that, and then the big thing is, so what? Again, a lot of people may not know with your time through Customworks. So you are, any of us who have purpose built cars basically have a piece of your, what I'm going to call a piece of your brain on the car from any brand at this point. So you are kind of the brain behind the adjustable toe arms through Customworks. Is that correct?
Yes, Chili Bowl made that happen. Or let me say a different way. The frustrations of a water hose at the Chili Bowl made that happen. Because you literally go from -2 right rear toe when it was dry. And then here comes the water hose. You didn't know it was coming out. And now you'll be 2 laps tight if you would just if you just reset the toe to like 1 out or 2 out, where it'd be the fastest. And so I remember literally going to the track with a wrench, and these were the standard blocks that you had to pick the hole to tighten it into. And if he's starting to, they're getting ready to end the race, and if you see him going towards the hose, you're trying to change a toe block as fast as you can. Or in some senses, we went up there with no toe block on, and we're watching to see if it went in, because it was more important to get the toe right for dry or wet, because it's such a complete difference. And that's what spurred that want to say there's got to be a better way. And that's how that adjustable toe arm come to be.
Very cool. So that's I think anybody listening who's ever dealt with the Customworks adjustable arms, and knowing that now we have a face to put with what we get to mess with almost on a weekly basis. It's pretty cool. So
I forget the
that's incredible.
gentleman's name that owns A Main, but I heard him on something saying that part of his peace in life is to take his mod sprint out on the dirt oval, and he said, "I will run laps, I will pull over, I'll adjust those," and he almost like said, "Damn toe arms." In a way, because he's like, I just find it fascinating. I can make this little change on these arms, and the car is a completely different car, and I can tune it into what I want it to do. And I thought that was pretty cool. And, it's like, there's somebody finding that tinker factor and understanding that this is how you go fast. You got to be able to make adjustments.
Absolutely. Well, let's lead up to that, and we'll go through that, and then kind of even talk about a little bit of the end of your Customworks era. But take me back to, so the employment side of things starts in 2004, but I hear that there may or may not have been a poker game that happened in 2003 that may have started a relationship there.
Yeah. So, yeah. Let's see, frame this out. From racing at Kranzels is when I first met the Landgrafs and Rob Cutman and Tony. And I would do Tony stock motors because apparently I was good at that. And that's how that relationship started. So then when the Landgrafs had told Tony that, essentially Jerry Landgraf, the father, he always had a side business as well, other than Customworks, doing high-end street rod upholstery, like leather work and things like that. And that, along with the dip in RC, this is when matched batteries and brushes and comms, had run us, and silicone tires had run dirt into the ground. That they couldn't rely on it for a living. So the hot rod stuff naturally took over their book. So Customworks is laying there doing next to nothing, essentially. And Brian and Jerry, Tony asked about it. I don't know how it mutually came about, but Tony was willing to buy it. And he didn't want to see it go to waste. They didn't have time for it. I think that was more or less where it was at. We don't have time for it anymore. We really it needs something else. So Tony, obviously at this time, it's 2004. So he's definitely solid with his NASCAR career by now. He's won a championship. And he had talked to Rob about coming to manage it. And Rob was supposed to get with me and ask me if I wanted to come, work there and, me and him be part of this deal to get it going. But I'm just playing poker. It's U.S. Open wheel at what used to be, what still is Cooper's RC in the middle of nowhere, Virginia. That's the nice way to say it, but Callens, Virginia, if you're looking on a map. And I'm just playing poker. We're, a group of us yucking it up. And Tony said, "So what's the deal?" And I'm like looking at the cards. I'm like, "What do you mean?" Like I just remember being confused between cards and what are you asking me? He goes, "So you're going to come work this deal or not?" And I'm like, "Work what deal?" And he says, "Customworks." And I said, "With Brian and Jerry?" And he's looking at me and I'm looking at him. We're both so confused. And he's like, "Rob didn't talk to you yet?" And I said, "No, about what?" And he goes, "Well, I'm going to buy it." And Brian's sitting over there holding his cards, and it looked like he had a good hand because he was getting anxious to want to get the table moving for the game. And Brian's like, "Yeah, he's going to buy it. Come on, let's move the pot along." So I just remember going, Okay, like Brian's nodding, Tony's saying he's going to buy it, and I was like, okay, cool. Give me 2 cards, and that was about the end of that. Like it was like such a like, oh no shit. So the next morning, I guess Tony talked to Rob. Rob's like, yeah, I didn't get with you about this yet, XYZ things, and I'm like, yeah, sure. I have a pan card that I drew up. So you know, when the race ends, Tony calls a couple weeks later and he's like, I want to go to the Snowbirds. How can we do that? And I said, well, it starts with money. And I said, just that simple. I said, I got a car drawn up and we talked about that. I said, but I got to buy carbon. We got to get aluminum cut. And I'm like, here's every week between now and the Snowbirds. Like, don't expect fantastic. Like, we'll get a car done, but this is definitely making love in the back seat. So he's like, dude, I'm gonna, I don't know. It wasn't text then. He gave me a credit card number or something for the machinist and to buy the materials. Uh, so I built 5 cars, I think it was. Me, Rob, Tommy Tire, and Frank Palomita. I know was one of them. The Silvas were in there. Daryl and Dwayne Silva. I think that was all of us. But long story short, we go there, we build the car. We had one weekend to practice, and Frank TQ'd and won 6 cell mod. I believe we put 3 cars in the A main. So to go from just, yeah, here's something I drew up, hack it out, bolt them together, fly to North Carolina, straighten these things out, go down there, race, and come out with that kind of result. That was really cool. And then I got back from Snowbirds, drove all the way back to Phil or Pennsylvania with Phil Marabella, uh, drove back to Charlotte, picked up a trailer, drove back to my house in Delaware, loaded up my stuff, and then the next day drove back to Charlotte. So the next 4 days after the Snowbirds was just me and I-95, moving life south. So that was 2004.
Okay. So before we go on and then to obviously talk about, the employment era of Customworks, and tell us a little bit more about, anybody who you just said Tony, the name Tony a lot. Anybody who doesn't know Tony Stewart, um, how does that relationship kind of start? Where you guys are buddies and where you guys are in a position to where he can look at you and go, Arnie, I want you to come work for me. Like, where does that start?
It goes back to that work factor. Like, I think the key thing that I've learned, and I'll credit Jim Beachley's wife. Folks may not know Jim, but it wasn't until they moved to the Carolinas and we went to dinner one night. Now, mind you, Denise, his wife, I've seen her a dozen times or so a year at races in Pennsylvania during the summer. And we're sitting at dinner and she goes, you're not a dick. Out of nowhere. I said, oh, I know. I said, you only know me from the RC track. And we never missed a beat. And she's like, yeah. And I said, and these are things that really I've looked at a lot in a lot of ways as you get older, but it goes back to that work factor. It's you're there to have fun, my weird version of fun, working to earn a result. And it's not win. It's not always win. It's your best result. Whatever you did last week, am I making it better? And that's the cruelty of racing and a work ethic and even time. I mean, time just is a thief in terms of your life, but we race against time in racing, and it's like I just want another half a tenth, and you want to quantify that every single way. If I put the body clips on backwards, I swear it picks up 200s, and you almost become superstitious to things because you want it. So I think that's the key. That's where when Tony looked around, when Brian and Jerry looked around, when they went to the folks that they trust in circles and said, who works? Who wants to make things happen? That my name must have washed up to the top a few times.
Nice. And then so unfold the onion a little bit more and peel that back a little bit more. So are you and Tony friends at the racetrack well before all this? I mean, so tell us about the establishing the friendship even before there's businesses even remotely related. So take us all the way back to meeting Tony Stewart and then
Well,
becoming buddies with him and then going into
yeah,
Customworks.
I think here's a good story. So again, Phil Marabella and I we were not happy with our cars before Snowbirds. This was like 2001 or two, so a couple of years before that. And there's a track in Limerick, PA, near Harrisburg, and the Cup season had ended. It's literally the Saturday before we're supposed to drive down to the Snowbirds. We're there practicing because we felt like we had buckets. And so Tony comes in. Rob, I guess he'd come in and was, seeing friends in Central PA. Rob was with him, and he was like, "What are you guys doing here?" Like, well, I could ask the same of you. You live in Indiana, but I understand you got a plane too, so it makes more sense. Um, and I was like, "There's shit." I said, "It's a shit box. It hasn't. It's I can't flush the demon out." Actually, I think the real story there was I had a servo saver that had went soft, and now that I got it fixed, or rigid servo saver again, it was just snappy. It was not comfortable to drive. I'd walked my setup so far away from what, because of this servo saver corrupting me. Anyhow, um, to Tony's point, he goes, "So when you heading down?" We're like, "We're driving down tomorrow, Sunday." And he goes, "What time you got to be there?" And I was like, "Well, everything we need to be set up Monday night because Tuesday morning, Tuesday's, blah 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 blah. Tuesdays when we gotta, Tuesday evenings when we hit the track. Well, you can fly down with me." Well, how do we get all our stuff in the plane? Oh, it'll be like now all of a sudden we're doing weights and balances at the RC track. How much of this stuff you taking? Yeah, and then we're running the number. He's like, "Yeah, I got enough room. I think we can do this." And thoughts of La Bamba go through your head. Not for ice, but for weight. So yeah, so it was so Sunday, instead of driving south to Orlando, I drove north to Harrisburg and got on his plane, flew. The first time I'd come to Charlotte, we stayed at his house. Now this is where like things get like surreal, because I feel like I made a very purposeful, thing to go. The guy's just an RC racer at the track. He has another day job too. And now you're in his house and there's a Winston Cup trophy. Now, if you're going to fangirl over two things between Tony Stewart and the Winston Cup trophy, I'm choosing the Winston Cup trophy. So I'm sitting there looking at this thing going, it's just sitting there like twinkling at you. So that's where like it's just like, where is my life right now? Like, what am I doing? Why am I here with an RC car? So he had work to do the next day, which was a Stacker 2 commercial with the Big Show from WWF or whichever era you're from, and Kenny Wallace. So I got to see the Big Show get absolutely eaten alive by his wife, who pulled up and yelled, "Paul, I need some money," which he came running over. Yes, ma'am. I mean, so I don't want to use a certain word, p-whipped, but because I don't need the Big Show coming after me if he's out there. But yeah, I was quite shocked. That taught me a lot about men and women's relationships, and that even the Big Show has to bow down. But anyhow, we get down to Florida the next day. We averaged, I think it was 112 between Daytona and Orlando in a rental Cadillac. This man is excited to get into the RC track. He's carried my things before I could get him out of the car, and he's into the pits. And this is where Ernie Pervetti knew Tony pretty well, and so did Jim Dieter. And they're like, "Whose stuff do you have?" And he's like, "Oh, I got Arnie stuff. Where are we pitting? What are we doing?" So he's just, he's 1,000 mile an hour. He wants to be at the Snowbirds and racing. And we get set up, we do our practice deal. And I thought sooner or later, like real life's going to call this man. And it was. And he just kept hanging it up. So when it comes time to go to sleep, he's like, I'm like, "Where are you going, back to Daytona?" Or he's like, "Oh, I can crash with you guys." Now this is the Ramadan. I called it the Ramadan Inn, the Ramada Inn on iDrive. And I mean, it's a dive. And we got two queen beds, and it's me, Phil, and now Tony. Now, mind you, I'm like, "Well, Phil and I can squeeze together on a bed, and you can have a bed." I didn't pay for jet fuel. I mean, it was the least I can do, right? No, I'll just sleep on the floor. It feels better on my back. Okay, okay, you're going to sleep on the floor. So in the middle of the night, I had to go pee, and I had to step over him to get into the bathroom to take a leak. And basically I go back to bed. Tony gets up in the morning. He had to make some calls or whatever. And then Phil and I are talking later that day. And I said, most surreal thing happened last night. He goes, what's that? I said, I had to step over a Winston Cup champion to take a leak. I was like, what is going on here? I said, is he ever, like, it was almost like, is he going back to work? Like, does he know he has a real job over? Because I think in his mind, it was like, I have to do media day, and then I have to show up for the first time in the car. Everything else can pound sand because snowbirds, because RC. And that's how he grew up. He grew up running RC cars when he wasn't running on it was Friday nights out in California. That's how he met the Landgrafs. But that's how I think it's through those stories. You asked me for how that relationship began with him specifically. And that's probably the one I remember the most. It was the coolest. It was my introduction to Charlotte. It was the easiest way to say, yeah, I could see myself living in that region. And just that's the maturity of things you do in the pits. Just helping a guy get his RC car on the track to how they'll help. They bring you into their lives in some ways. So
Oh, absolutely.
whether they're famous or not.
No, and that's kind of something that Nathan and I hit on. I mean, anybody who knows Tony outside of a race car, Tony Stewart, he's just one of the dudes. He's just a guy, and he actually I feel like from my experience with Tony, like you lose him. The quickest way to lose him is treat him like he's somebody other than just a guy. And
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I think that's. I mean, that I feel like that's the. Like I spoke about. I wouldn't want to be judged or known for for everybody who knows me at the RC track all the time. But having met other folks of that type of circle around the Charlotte area, yeah, it's hard. It's hard to really, not feel an imposter syndrome. That look at when things are going great for you, you're like, where's my life? At some point, your ego carries you away to make you forget it. But then there's times you wake up and go, is this really my life? I mean, I remember I remember Tony telling me we're flying God knows where, and he's telling me what it costs to run the plane and how, when Gibbs sets them up, like Gibbs would basically front you money as a bonus, but you got to buy a lake house, you got to buy a plane, you basically got to assume all this debt. And he goes, yeah, what this thing costs. And I said, so this is just, and we're inside the plane, and I'm like, this is just a Honda Civic in the sky. And he's like, yeah, exactly. I said, you and I are just as broke as one another, just at different levels. Like I'm broke at the 97 Dodge level, and you're broke at the Honda Civic in the sky level. I was like, completely understand it. So it's interesting to hear two people cry about cash flow with so many zeros difference between them.
it's weird when that decimal point starts moving. It's strange, a strange thing.
Yeah, it's the same problem whether you got 7 digits or 4 digits apparently. So, yeah, that was interesting. That was so you got problems too.
Yeah,
Hey,
really
I'll give you another one. For a short time I lived at the house, I was there. There was a couple other people. Rob lived there, and 2 other guys, and Tony had left to go, start the season. And I forget what I was cleaning up in the kitchen, and I found a check for, I think it was like $1.8 million, and it was the check for winning the championship that year. And I'm like, this is where you go, who leaves this laying around? So I called him and I was like, hey, I think it's actually text now at this era. And I was like, I found a check. It's pretty sizable. Let me know. So he calls. He's like, what is it? And I told him what it was. He's like, dude. He's like, he says, I thought when they gave me the check on the stage, it was like just an envelope, and I just like chucked it at the end of the night. He says, and then Joe asked me like the next day or two, he goes, like, where's the check? And he's like, I thought they mail it to you. They're like, no, they gave it to you on the stage. Big ceremony. Remember all that? And he's like, oh, yeah, you probably want to cancel that check. I think I threw it away. So so these are kind of the weird, the weird parts of, when you look towards, people that you relate to through the flat lens of life, and seeing them in their sports world and then realizing they still got the same damn problems we do. I just don't. I just know what I've done with $1.8 million checks. I haven't seen one yet, but I'm pretty sure I'm not going to lose it.
Absolutely. Oh man, that is awesome. So okay, so we kind of get through. Now we're buddies with Tony Stewart. Now we're buddies with Cutnam and all these guys.
Yeah, but 2004 is also where the and I mean, sorry, Gina, my wife, but my longest relationship of my life began, and that's, I mean, well, I've got others, but I'm just being sarcastic here. But with Nathan, so
Okay,
Phoenix, uh, RC Mania, I think it was. That's when I first met Billy Fisher. Um, but Nathan and their Texas-sized sprint cars came there for this big race, and Nathan won. But that's the first time I met him, and you're just a nice guy. How you doing? Yada yada yada. So the next big race somewhere later in the year is in Moni, Illinois, Roy Moody's track. So Roy Moody was like, I think, Roar number 2. Like, he helped make Roar, and Nathan came up there, and this poor guy, I saw his nitro sprint, and I see his car, and I refer to some folks like that as Captain Pity Wrench. Like, he can drive it like a superhero, but when it comes to wrenching, oh my god, it's horrible. I mean, you just you don't know if he takes a wrench and just bangs on it or tries to turn it. Like, you you don't, so that's where it started. It wasn't out of pity. I just, something pulled me towards that guy and was like, here, let me help you with that, and got his stuff straight. Um, the next race he came to was the open wheel in Virginia. He ran mod sprint there. That's its own. There's another story there. But that's how the relationship started with Nathan, and it's definitely one in my life away from RC. I mean, obviously now I'm living in Lantana, Texas. About 2 miles that way is where he lives, and that's by a mutual want between us and our families that we just want to be around one another. It's a weird thing to be competitive, and then as much as I've served Nathan since '04, as some might say, I've never felt like he's raced against me or for me, or and I only want to say with me. It's just always like, I just want to see Nathan do good as much as I do. Like, and I've had that maybe one or two other times racing wise where I just want that person to race well each and every time. So
sure.
yeah, so '04 is the year. '04 was also the year I met Nathan.
Yeah. So '04 obviously was a huge year for you then.
Yeah.
Both personally, professionally, as friends, all of that stuff. So kind of staying on the Customworks train here, let's talk about um, your best memory of what does the first day of I am going to make a living professionally in this sport, in this hobby. Um, where's your mind at? Where's your heart at? Where's everything at? And on that first day when you walk in the doors, I'm getting started today.
So Rob had got most of his stuff moved down to Tony's shop in Denver, North Carolina, and I remember he showed me how he packed a couple orders, and just, it was kind of a chill day, but pack the orders, get things shipped. Okay, we checked all the boxes for a day, together. And I'm like, all right, so first of all, we just won the Snowbirds. People want a pan car. Brian and Jerry had, and then, put it where it's at. Brian and Jerry had were paid to make a new um, car platform, but they're not racing. They hadn't raced in a few years. So this, they're like handing me this car, and I'm looking at it, and it's like things you can just look at 1, 2, 3, and you're like, that ain't gonna fly. And maybe some ideas there, some good, not great. And now I need to make a dirt oval car too. Like we can't use the current platform that we're on. We certainly can't go to what Rob knew best, which was the Terminator style noses that he pioneered through, I'd say, the 90s, because that would be seen as not Customworks, but they ran really really well on most track conditions. And I remember distinctly saying to Rob, I'm like, so where's the business at for, like, where are we at for sales? Like when Brian Jerry handed it off. And I think the prior year sales was literally like 32 or $36,000 all in the whole year. Top line. Not like did they make 36,000? No. $36,000 worth of business. So you can do math. It was virtually dead. And I'm like, okay, so you wanted to work in RC. And that from a fiscal standpoint made me realize like how much benevolency is occurring through Tony to get started, but also that respect towards him that he's not an evergreen money machine, that we've got to earn this, we got to make our living and give him some return on this. And oh, by the way, I got to have my own life at some point in this too, right? I got to be able to buy a house and have kids and get married and be a productive member of society. So it's like you're 27, 28 years old and you got a lot of things going for you, but you're at ground zero. And you got now two things that are on your back. This pan car to finish and put in a box. I haven't made a manual or put a box together yet. And a dirt oval car that, oh, by the way, is in Rob's mind is 90% done. But and when I say it's 90, when he says it's 90% done, he means like done, ready to sell. And I mean 90% done, like not going to work. Like it's 90% done, like put it in a pot, put it in trash. So yeah, that was the first memory of getting an RC. I mean, the next ones would be just vendors. Like I need I knew who to call for carbon. I had a machinist, from that prior story about making the pan car. But now you gotta quote quantity. Now you gotta make dollars and cents work. Like, and there's a lot to get done quick, and still answer the phone and be, this is where you struggle to be that team, to not be that guy, but you want to be a team guy versus you need to be a guy earning his keep and making money happen. So you really get stretched.
Sure. And I think that's, an important thing. Like I think a lot of people when they think, "Oh man, I just want if I could just work in RC, that would be the dream job." I think it's really interesting to, you're sitting there, you're sitting back on day one and it's like, how in the hell are we going to do this? So it's a really interesting perspective of, know your dreams, or, understand
Yeah.
what your dreams are.
I mean, I think about it from Dustin's perspective. He's, I wouldn't say he had it pretty fortunate, but he worked for his machinist boss, and he's grown his business through that relationship, to scale it, right? Like he didn't have to borrow money from a guy, or he didn't have to have money fall out of a tree. But the point with the Tony side of things, that the thing that made it believable fiscally for me was, um, and again, more like disjointed. Oh, by the ways out of Rob, um, we're going to hire Jim Dieter. Does that bother you? No, like that's a great thing. Like, how did that happen? Well, him and Tony talked. Ernie's mad. Blah blah blah. Words, words, words. And I'm like, please, love of God, tell me we're going to make a stock motor. Yes. So this was the tail end of brushless though, and I don't know for what reasons Jim never got the motor done in a hurry, or it took too long. But at some point, it hurt my relationship with Dieter, because I finally had to say enough is enough. We're throwing money at this guy and we've got nothing, and brushless is here now. Stock motors are done. It was real cool. The column was actually double long, and the brushes ran on two different paths instead of hitting the same spot on the column all the time, for those who know. So could have been cool, but facts are facts. Too much money was spent there, and I'm sitting here. We're doing doing all I can to grow my piece of it, which was the cars and getting the Customworks brand going.
Sure. So, tell us a little bit about, kind of pull the curtain back if you can about the actual design and the engineering behind a purpose built dirt oval RC car? I mean, where is your mindset at? Where do you personally start? I mean, obviously it's a blank slate. Tell us about that and tell us your mindset on and the evolvement of the hobby.
You say that, and a very humbling story come to light. So I might skip ahead a platform, but the nitro scene had come about, and everybody's excited, and people are coming to race in droves. And I'll always say in some of my setup seminars, keep things centered, vanilla, etc. And I built what became the first GSX series car, so the Enforcer GSX and the Intimidator GSX. And I had made it to where we could offset the towers. So that was, I wouldn't say it's offset cage, but theoretically it was. So think of if you have the tranny centered, toe mounts are this way. Now we pick the toe mounts up, move everything to the right, short dog bone, long dog bone, and same with the front end. And that was all to get the motor and the pipe over to left rear and drive the car. Because why? Well, we had power. We had a lot more power than we were used to. Number two, you couldn't run away from the power. There was no more, I'll go run stock. No, it's nitro. When you pulled a little slide, the fuel dumps in, you've put your order in. It's going. It's going to go hard. So you needed more control. And that was my thought looking there was you look, the more you can keep the left rear stuck, the more the cars feel snug. And I built the car versus, we had a car that was centered up and ran well, built this offset car. Phil Cooper had come down to Cooper's to run it that weekend. And when we ran it on Friday, I don't know what the track. I'm not blaming the track. It was, but that particular day, that offset car was a bag of junk. And Phil's just like, you can just see it on his face. He's not thrilled. It's not amused. It's like, this is unfun. This is you wanted to work in RC. Here you go. You just put all your effort and time into making all these parts, and now it sucks. So we sleep on it. We come back the next day. I might have made a couple changes to the car, but it wasn't anything earth shattering. And from there forward, 4 8-pound springs around this offset car, set the ride heights level, set the front wheel weights equal. Because you have some left side weight, the left rear will be heavy. It should drive nice and honest. And from that point forward, that car was so easy to drive. Phil's smiling, he's loving it. And that was the first kind of like, humbling experience, but also that you've got to really think like around what are we doing here? It's not, I want to make it faster. It's not as controlled as electric. It's always got more power. It's got a lot more mass. And that's where you got to start looking at things first. If you're going to build a car is really the mass and the tires of it. Like that's the first relationships.
So 2015 is when you decided to call it quits at Customworks. What was the last car? What were the last kits that you were a part of?
Intimidator 3. So I guess it would be the Enforcer 4. I guess the 4 versions, I guess would be right about there. I remember distinctly, and things were, things with me and there were brewing up, but it was the, I'm going to make sure I get it right. The Enforcer 3 was GBX 3 was like brainless. That was a great car. Then we took that car and offset the cage for more left side weight, more wing to the left, more stock, and that it was Enforcer 4. So the 4 series is when I was gone. And then I think Outlaw at the time was like Outlaw 2 or maybe Outlaw 3 on the Rocket and Outlaw. Yeah, Rocket and Outlaw were on 3 versions. But I just remember, we were running the last open wheel at Bumps and Jumps, and we had to work. Remember, again, we moved things to the left. We planted the left rear. Now it won't turn as good in mod. Stock, it loved it. But when you drove the car, all that mass accelerated, it didn't want to turn real easy. And it's like, wait a second, that seemed like it was going to be a good thing from the lessons on Nitro. So we really had to put some extra innings work. And you go to that race, and folks have this is where you get between team guys and people that want to be sponsored and want to do work. And you have a lot of guys that want to be sponsored and want to show up to this race, but they don't do work. So if you can't hand them the setup, they're frustrated with you. And from my perspective, you want just me to dump everything out on the table and make it happen for you. I'm frustrated that you think this is going to work for you too. So that that was just icing on the cake for where the relationship was. Rob's a great guy, but Rob, just at the end of the day, you can't show up to work at 10 a.m. And a decade of being patient through some of these things, and now I got married. We were trying to have kids, and the kid thing was actually now a problem. We weren't getting pregnant, so I'm working through that in the background, and you're wanting this business to get right, and then you're realizing how folks are treating you both internally and externally, and it made me negative. It made me a really negative person, but at the same time, a lot of those folks never asked, "Hey, what's up?" Instead, they just jumped on the bandwagon and say, "Yeah, Arnie's got to go." And that's the more I dug in. Hey, I've built this thing. Facts are facts. Those 10 years came off the sweat off my brow and my work off my back. Rob helped, and he helped in a lot of ways. He did a lot. He did a lot to standupdirtable.com. I'll give him that. But I was basically like, it's time. My attitude was my way or fire me, and that's eventually where it came down to in 2015. Don't regret it.
To go back just a little bit, then, like, let's get nerdy for a minute. Let's go pure engineer for a minute.
Oh boy.
Like let's go down. What softwares are you using? What kind of analytics are you guys looking at? What kind of testing schedule do you guys have? I mean, all this like get down to the nerdy side of it, of
Oh
what it really
no.
takes to bring a car to life.
This is going to get so disappointing, but this comes back in that work side. No, I drew in SolidWorks. I some of the body molds that I made, I drew, like 9070, what was it, Keystone late model, the Rocket late model. There's basically I drew all those in SolidWorks in that era, and then had those molds machined, which was complete. Sourcing the material that you can just put in the you're a machinist, put in the mill, 5-axis the hell out of it, and turn around and go, hey, this is 97% ready to mold now. Like, that was the only way we're going to get molds done. But molds made money. I mean, you at the time you had about $7 in the bag. He retailed it for 35. Do the math. That's enough margin there and then for somebody that's sitting there going, GD, you guys are making a shit ton of money. No, that's where the margins needed to be to have a healthy company at about 5 times rate of cost. So SolidWorks for the parts. Now, when it comes time to actually do the mass, this is where you get lucky versus real cars, because you can do this. You can pick the thing up. So, instead of rolling it back and forth on a surface plate and the scales and having to really, put mass into a program like that, like engineers would in real race cars, you can do it right on the bench and get a weight percentage, forward, backward, left, right, total mass. And those are the things that, again, how fast and efficiently can I do these things? But more importantly, I've got to be relatable, right? Like, at the time, some of the eras, there's Nathan, who, has now grown out of his Captain Pity Wrench infancy into somebody I can rely to at least tighten the screw. He won't get the parts in the right order, and that still doesn't happen today. But then there was Chris Shearburn, if you knew him from Central Illinois. Chris, I love Chris. Doug Cannon will call him numbnuts. That dude worked. And I could then say to Chris, hey, scale it like this, take a couple pictures, measure something out, and Chris would do it. And it was few and far between the doers and the want-tos. And some people got their jobs and this is their hobby, fair, but you got to show up and you got to race if you want to do good. And it's only a testament to the work that we could do in this, just picking with Chris and Nathan, to say, we've mastered this much simple that we can hand it to you and you'll have a great day racing too. And then they'll get frustrated that you still outrun them. And it's like, well, that's the next pieces of the pie. You gotta be present to race if you think you're going to run with Chris or Nathan or myself. It's just, you're within a lap. It was in a bell. I forgot to put a bell on the box. There you go. So, but really those are the tools. I mean, it's the CAD and the screen to get the parts right and the measurements and be able to make sure it fits right and get it made. But then it's the same pit bench that you see, but with a nice set of scales, a little flatter board, just an ability to work on the car. And I mean, when 3D printing started to come about, I used to have to go over to Brown and Miller because they had a printer and they would print parts out for me, and that was like cheating. Because before, if it was carbon, I had to print it off on a PDF, make sure it's scaled right, cut the thing out, and then lay it out to make sure that the part was going to work, right? So going to 3D printers, and I got mine's right over here on the other side of the tree. Um, that's like cheating. I mean, it's what a wonderful world, what a maker world. Like I look, what is it? The Club Race Heroes, the on road cars that are completely 3D printed. They
Oh,
were on,
yes. Yep.
yeah. Like I don't know how RC hasn't blown up behind that.
Right.
Maybe because transponders cost $120. I don't know, but we can fix that too. But that to me is like that's if you want to work and design stuff and make and truly just go top to bottom crazy, that could be your jam. But the more you machine and I guess to roll this up between Chris and Nathan, why does it matter to get it right fundamentally? Well, that was the first release of the Outlaw kits. This was 2008, so the economy had tanked, and I'm sitting there going, Rob and I together were like, oh shit, we're getting ready to really lose a lot of racers. So the focus was we had some volume of sales. How do we mold this? But when you mold, you're basically putting your money on the table to say, I'm going to spend big money here that I'm going to use a shit ton of these parts for a long time. So that's where the first Outlaw and Rocket kits came from. And the goal was to sell profitably a $299 purpose built kit. And we did. And it was great. I remember, I don't know if it was Eugene Ryder. I want to go there, but Nathan remembered a story. But we're getting close to releasing the kits and somebody in central Illinois, this is where you could run. This is good for you because Maryville was Friday nights or Thursday nights, and then Big Bill's was like Friday night or Saturday night, and then Allen was running Sundays. I forget what it was, but somebody ran their mouth online, and rare to get Rob Cutman riled up. And he's like, that guy's such a pain in the ass, blah 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 blah. And I just said to Rob, I said, well, I said, I'm feeling froggy. I said, if you want, I said, I'll run out there this weekend. And I said, just see what the car will do, because no one truly had seen it yet. And he goes, do you think Nathan would go? I said, I don't know. Let me call him. So literally in a course of 24 hours, call Nathan. Hey, you want to go hand some heads out this weekend in Central Illinois? Yeah, sure. Where do I got to go? I'm going to get you a ticket. Your flight to St. Louis. So I load up my stuff. We had no plan. This is like a Monday. I had no plans to race that weekend. No tires are glued, no nothing. Gather up all this shit, jump in the truck, go pick Nathan up in St. Louis, drive up. We ran Maryville, we ran Big Bills, I know we ran two of the three, but bottom line is at Allen's, we both ran 40 or 41 laps. We were about 3 laps ahead of whoever ran their mouth. And that was the way we debuted the kit was by going up there and going $299 kit just smoked you. And believe you me, it was nice because we had a lot of back orders after that weekend, through the power of dirtoval.com and a little crap talking. So
Nice. That's
yeah.
cool. Heck yeah. So I think we'd be remiss if we don't talk about the adjustable arms.
Sure.
Where obviously where did it come from? The answer there, and at least correct me if I'm wrong, but it came from necessity, number one.
It's the mother,
But
yeah.
but where but where when you finally hit on this, or you hit on the final variation, I mean, what's going through your mind?
Um, yeah, so to walk it back, it was chili bowl. You got water, you didn't, and you needed to adjust for it. If you got the water, you needed to tow the car out. And the blocks that we had were set up, tunable, but not on a dime. I want to say someone may have had some kind of adjustable arm out there, but it too was just like one iota easier than turning the screws out of the chassis. And my whole metric to this was it needs to be like turning a shock collar. Like you need to be able to pull in, count the 10, you've made the change and you're back on the track. Otherwise, this doesn't fly. But because the tuning element was that critical for biasing the car for oval. And I just, you ask how does the design work? And I literally had a couple suspension arms and I ran a couple of them through the bandsaw, knocked the center out, and a couple pieces of paper. And I mean, you could draw fast on the screen, but nothing's like real life. And you're just trying to sit there and go, how, because there's a certain moment when you draw on the screen and you're like, this part is nice. It's like it's so right, and then you make it, and you're like, holy shit, it's so small and dainty and thin here. And it says break here, right here. You can see right here where you draw all these things, especially carbon fiber, you draw all the cool holes in it because you're trying to flex it out there. Well, then you look across and it's like a dotted line just says snap right here. So then you're like, well, shit, I didn't see that on the screen. So it would start on the bench. And I remember specifically Jody Utt was one of the North Carolina racers who I could trust. Like, look, I want to figure this out, and showed him some of what I was doing with it, and he's like, I don't know, man, if you know Jody and you know the northern North Carolina, Southern Virginia dog, man, I don't know about that. Let me think. And it was in collaboration with him that it finally pushed it through to see how to hinge it and get a range of motion that mattered. So now that we got this arm built and printed and it works, or printed or actually machined at the time, um, Matt Murphy was not a positive word in the office. And as RC goes, you just figure somebody's going to copy it and sell it themselves. And that's where I put my head down in the evenings and studied up on how to, write a patent. There's certain language that goes with it and how you declare things and what makes it novel and unique and a utility. So I did all that. We got it done. Um, Through Tony's relationships, there's an attorney's office in Indianapolis that had a patent attorney service, and the guy gave me a B for writing my own patent. He said, "You actually did pretty good." I take that as a high compliment. Rarely do I remember my compliments, but that's one of them. Um, and it's crazy, but we spent about 7 grand. I mean, today's money, that doesn't sound crazy. Back then, for Customworks, but business and revenue, that 7 grand mattered, but it wasn't the craziest number. But once we put it on dirtoval.com and showed it around, we had more. We had more. We had enough back orders with profit to cover the tooling entirely on the first weeks of shipment, which is like a lottery ticket. I mean, honest to God, that was a big get for Customworks in terms of the company and fiscal performance. So, but that's how it come about. I mean, the darn water hose at Chili Bowl. You either just want something to tune fast.
So I don't think it's for maybe those of us that are in the know or that follow our hobby a little bit closer than just showing up and racing. It's not a secret that that patent actually runs out in the next couple years.
Yeah, it's a 13 year. I forget. First of all, I remember what year it was, but they ran it up to. I mean, you can get them, I think, to 13 to 15 years extension. But yeah, it should be coming up here about soon, and then it becomes. But honest to God, there's so many ways around a patent. I know one guy, he had a cam shaped deal, and it's like, look, I wrote that into the patent. I showed him after he, wanted to have his version of it, because it wasn't just his cam version of it. It's how hard you work to put all the pivot and relationship points to get it all in one spot and not make the arm longer or shorter and not break. And he's borrowing off of all those other things, and then wanting to say, well, I did the cam and it's different. And it's like, yeah, but that's the part of patent language. I get to think of all the things that I would do differently, list them, and protect those as well. And the real reality was the patent was written because I swore I knew Matt would copy it. And I don't know if he ever didn't copy it, because he never did, because of the patent or not. But I figured that was going to be the way to finally just put him away, because he's in some aspects he's a really passionate person and good for the hobby. In other sides, he's not. And in this sense, he was not a friend of Customworks, and it was, please tread here and kindly will make life hell for you. I never did. And the other person, I warned him, and he toned it down in terms of his rhetoric online, which was enough respect, I think, for where things needed to be, and nothing ever became litigious out of it. But if you ask me, and I'll say it for the third time, it was a Matt Murphy trap.
Sure. Well, that's interesting. And so the reason that I asked that is I want to know how, that patent coming to the end of its life cycle and how instrumental that design was for. I mean, I don't. I mean, anybody who's listening to you right now, it's pretty prevalent. Like you're proud of that. You're proud of the entire process of that, as you should be. So the reason that I ask, and we're talking about it, is how does that make you feel that we're going into the next era of that design as it becomes unprotected now? How
Oh
does that make you feel?
man, I mean, I laugh because Dustin has said a couple times that you and that damn patent, and I'm like, yeah, well, I'm sorry, the patent's not a trophy. The the fact that it had that much impact on all our racing,
Hmm.
and when I made the Traxxas versions and some of the SC10 versions, that those were when those went out the door. That's when I knew Dirt Oval was spreading. Like selling those arms to our racers, I mean, we're already in the Dirt Oval church. We're already believers. But when I saw SC10 and Traxxas ones go out, I'm like, hot damn, yeah, because I know we're getting those guys. Now you could use them for off road too, but they were truly, but you buy them to use them for Dirt Oval, and you knew you were getting more racers into the church, so to speak. So that, I think that's the moment of pride for it, is that. Now if you want my ego on it, it's, I don't know what's come about as far as a part goes or something on the car that has been as impactful as that some 13, 15 years ago. And it's only now, your conversation of it, somebody else maybe a year or two ago, and I was like, it kind of was like, that mattered, because to me it was like it was something we needed to race, just race better anyhow, or make our lives easier. I mean, there's a lot to be said that come out of the Chili Bowl for innovation. I mean, even heat race qualifying format, that was came out of this head, under this hat. Um, Not the invite idea, but Scotty had the invite idea, which was off a Reedy format, but then he needed a dirt oval version of it, and I wrote that for him as well. It's not in Live RC, but uh, it exists in an Excel sheet and some brain power, which now seems to be every late November when Scotty says, "Hey, by the way, I need a hand."
That's awesome.
Yeah,
So
and it starts like a very horrible math problem. How many racers? How many heats? How like please fill out this sheet for this year's event.
nice. So that's why. So you're the mind behind all of the pre-sale of when you got to get your entry in and all that. You got to have that so you guys can formulate.
Well, I think that's just proper organization and more racers than time allows, for sure. I mean, Scotty, that race has grown so much. It's a weird scenario in that as much as I race, I don't yearn to race that race every year anymore. That's why Nathan and I, going back last year, the first world championship year, was a big deal because we had said before every Chili Bowl and after every Chili Bowl, do we want to do that next year? No. And then we'd ask ourselves usually about June or July, do we want to do Chili Bowl? No. And that was pretty much the final no, because we knew it took 6 months of, I wouldn't say practice, but just cadence to be ready at the level we want to be when we walk in the building. And when the World Championship thing come about, it actually come out after we were like, okay, we think this is the year we want to do it. And then I don't know if Scotty intuitively picked up on that. Not saying it on our behalf whatsoever, but coincidentally, this whole concept comes up about this invite class and wanting, and Scotty had said this some 10 years ago. I really wish, this is the Cooper days, so it's more than 10 years ago. I really think Dirt Oval deserves a world championship. It'll never fly with, towards the Europeans or any of those sanctioning bodies, but it is as big or bigger than some of the other forms of RC racing that get a quote world championship. And he goes, I want to see it grow to that. So he did. And we put our heads down for that. And I mean, if you watched us ugly cry afterwards, I mean, a lot of emotion come out there because when you're, Nathan says it a little faster than I do, but when you're over 40 and you start realizing like age is going to eventually get you, and then, the amount of work you put into something, and you're like, well, I don't know how we'll stack up, at this race. And we know how we do weekly, but, and then you couple that with the very, kind of just awkwardly sad circumstances of how Randy Lathrop passed earlier, like in that October, because it was Randy and Jennifer were racing with us. It was like the four of us, doing races, here and there through the summer, getting ready for Chili Bowl. And then, I mean, everything was good till it wasn't with Randy. He passed. It was very sudden. And you just felt like all this work and you got kind of the air pulled out of the balloon, but you got to press on. And we did. And then, so when it all, Nathan won, it was just, what a nice day.
Yeah, absolutely.
I laugh because I said the same thing to Tyler this year before the race started. 20. I've got 3 pictures that I really like of RC racing, like of myself. Like I don't have a lot of pictures of my RC stuff. You can see the walls in here. It's very, very drab. But it's the year Nathan won Chili Bowl 2017. We almost won it in 16. Even Scotty didn't know we didn't win. It was like a weird last lap hullabaloo. But Nathan and I's picture together in 2017, that to me is a huge trophy. Of course, the World Championship together, that was a trophy. And like I told Tyler, because I was away, I was actually home. My dad was ill for this year for his deal. And I said, well, if he gets stable, I said, I'll come to the Chili Bowl and help you. I said, but I'm only coming because I'm only coming because we're going to get a picture taken together. I said, that's all I want out of this is a picture. And he's like, got it. So not to put any heat on Tyler, but he was next to suicidal 3 weeks before that race because his late model was not so good, but that's another story.
So I think one of the things you just hit on there that racers would find really interesting to pick your brain on is when you guys say you start looking at Chili Bowl, especially when you guys were in the thick of Chili Bowl, you guys start looking at it June or July, 6 months previous to the race.
Oh, absolutely.
What does that look like? What are you guys actually? What are you doing? What is that preparation? What are you starting to do at that timeline?
Well, I mean, the first things first, it's on sprinters. I don't love it. I mean, Dirt Oval runs 51 weeks a year on ellipses and dirt webs. So, and that's a Scotty thing and I don't even look, don't even go look over the ledge. It just is. So the first thing is go run sprinters. And, Taylor Park is right up the road from here. And I'm like, why can't we just run sprinters through practice in the first round? Who gives a crap? We already know that we know the track's going to come alive in the second round. That's when we show up. We put our dirt webs on and then race. But don't care. There's a whole thing to learning and practicing and trying where you've got to surrender to, I don't care about the result anymore. I don't today I'm not on. I'm just trying things, leave me alone. Because I think, the online world puts those results, and a lot of people get driven to just, well, I got to go earn this result. I got to do my best. And it's like, that's too much on your head. How about you just go out there and figure out how to master something today or learn something about it? So that's where we started. It's with running the sprinters. Why have we not run on sprinters before? Of course we have. But are you used to it? Do you know exactly when they feel the best? Have you looked at when they feel the best? Love of God, I'm looking for my phone, but you got a magnifying app on here. You can use the camera lens. And then if you get to be 48 years old, I still have 20/20 vision, but I use the camera to look at the tread. And you can tell the difference between a tire that's fresh or broke in or about right if you just start, again, being curious and applying yourself. So the other side of why so far out, it's life at this point. Nathan's with 2 kids. I've got a job. My wife has her own business as well. And you got to start looking at it going, okay, it's going to take this many outings to get things where we want it to be and stable. And then, we go the extra mile and we have our sets of tires broke in. We're not showing up to the Chili Bowl. I don't know if everybody's figured this out over the years, but we're not there gluing tires. I don't even think we have glue with us. We do, but I don't ever remember bringing it out. We have sets ready to go, and we know what those sets are. We've run them and went, these all run the greatest. These all run good. This set sucks. We'll practice with it. This set, for some reason, just ran its what off. I don't know why it's magical. There's always something to be superstitious about. There it is. That's the one set, whether just like Days of Thunder, whether you think it's special or not, they're match special, staggered perfect. That's your confidence in a bag. So there's always, if there's 12 tires, there's always 10 good ones, one set that sucks, and then one special set. That's the current mix.
Cool. Very cool. Well, we kind of touched on, being a RC podcast, and I know we're already I've already taken over an hour of your time here. We don't need to touch too terribly deep on Husqvarna or your new forensic expert job now within that you started in 2025. But one of the things that I do want to touch on are, although you're an incredibly bright individual and an innovator inside of our hobby, you're also a proven winner too. And a lot of people may not know that about you as well. So, a Roar Mod Nats winner, I believe 3 times. You've won Snowbirds, the U.S. Open Wheel. You've won a plethora of times. Chili Bowl winner, and then a bunch of other ones as well. Tell us, pick one out of the lot there, and everybody kind of talks about Chili Bowls. So if I have a preference, don't talk about a Chili Bowl, the Chili Bowl, but which one sticks out to you? Which one, anybody would give their left arm for one of those, let alone all of them that you have, and tell us about the one that really meant the most.
Oh man, well, I'm gonna disappoint you. It's not Dirt Oval. I would say the ones, and I know it's because it's the only trophies I really have out. It was the Trinity Spec series. If anybody remembers the Street Spec kits, there was a really fast racer, Mike Bednar. He was not sponsored by Trinity, so they didn't break any rules, but he definitely got the good motor and the good battery. And I didn't know this then. This is things you learn after the years and your friends. But he told me these things. But I won that series, and it was like by a point or two over him. Incredibly close. 70 to 110 entries, one class, 10-week series at about 10 different tracks in the Northeast. So So knowing how, and you're going to see the theme here, knowing how hard I worked to get to win that series. And again, it wasn't until about the 6 races in that I realized, hey, I can win the series. Then you're optimizing to win the series. That one sticks out. The next one sticks out would be Roared Modnats at Sandhills in 2007 ish. The reason being is there was a racer that raced a lot, Greg Honeycutt. This was his home track. Greg's work ethic was, I mean, you can't match it. I mean, the guy had a tire truer for every tire on the car. Like, he had a program. He ran his batteries 2 weeks, cleaned them up, rematched them, sold them back to the hobby store. This is right before lipos come about. I mean, he always had fresh sticks. His work, if you can beat him, you are King Tut. And now I got to race weekly with him. And that was its own learning curve. I didn't luck into beating him. I beat him. I used less stuff and learned how to get better. And then finally, when I called Danny and said, I need sticks for the Roar Nats, and he sent them, I suddenly had the gift of more and didn't know how much less I had versus him. And I would say that was a majority. That was enough to get me over the hill, but it was working on the car, learning the car, and the TQ and win over him at that track in that era. Anybody that knows him goes, oh, hot damn, yeah, that was never, no one thought they would ever see Greg Honeycutt lose at his home track. So, again, that work ethic piece of it. How hard did you work to get it? So yeah, were they the biggest races? Hell no. Snowbirds was huge. Snowbirds is his own funny story because Charlie Swank at the time worked for Novak. Frank Ulbrich, if you know that name from the drag race and stuff, he ran oval. And I qualified fourth. And Charlie says, hey, I'll go over your motor, make sure nothing's wrong with it. Now I say that in quotes, meaning it will pass tech, and if nothing's wrong with it, because you never know when a sensor board or something would go at that era. So I wrote my name on the rotor because if you saw Charlie's table, there's rotors everywhere. And I wanted to make sure he didn't lose my rotor. So he checks it. I come back a couple hours later. I'm like, Charlie, where's my motor? Oh, yeah. He gets my stator and he's like, this stator is actually pretty good. I said, okay. He goes, but your rotor, he goes, something's wrong with it. Something's not right. And he's looking all over the table. I'm like, it's right there. I can see my initials I wrote on the end of it. And he measures it and he's like, it's 200 points off. Like, if a good one was 1,400 points on the checker, this one's like 1,180. He's like, why? I'm like, I don't know. What's a good one? He goes, 1,400 or something. I was like, what's Ulbrich got? He's like, because Charlie gave him the cream of the crop. So Charlie looked at me and goes, go over to Frank. Now, a lot of people didn't get along with Frank. Me and Frank always were on good terms. He said, go over to Frank and tell him he's got to give you a rotor. And I went over there and said, Frank, I said, Charlie sent me over. And he goes, you need a rotor? Now, this is like saying you're going to change your whole car right before the A main. And I was like, yeah, I need a rotor. He's like, how bad's your rotor? I said, Charlie said it's pretty bad. It's like 1,100. And when I said 1,100 something, Frank's face melted. He turned into his bag, had 3 rotors sitting there. He goes, I have the best one. Here's the 2, 3, and 4 are almost equally as good as that. He said, congratulations, you're going to win the Snowbirds. And I went, are you serious? He goes, he says, if you can qualify fourth on that, he goes, this is money in the bag. He said, I want you to know how to get the hell out of your way. He said, gear it up about 3 teeth. So think about that. I want to, and throwing it out there for Frank Ulbrich fans, but here's a man who's TQ'd the biggest race of his year, finding out that he's about to get his ass kicked and has to give me the rotor to do it with. And he did it graciously. And I did. I went out there and smoked them. But the hard part was over. The car was just that good. So, that was a big win, but the work wasn't near as hard as the other two. So, I shared 3 stories. I was supposed to do one. Somebody out there is probably either fell asleep watching this or is saying, no, tell me another one. I hope they're saying the latter. So,
Yeah, no, I think everybody's going to be pretty infatuated for sure. So one last question before we get to the end of our show here, that I have written down that I wanted to get your opinion on is, again, we've used terms like innovator for you. We've used terms, winner, um, all kinds of other things. So you have been around, you've been in the hobby for almost since the beginning, all the way down until present day, and you're still winning, having fun, participating, all that today. When you look at where we are in today, 2026, in the state of our hobby, our sport, whatever you want to call it, what do you think we need? What does particularly dirt oval RC, but maybe even RC as a whole, whatever your opinion of this is, what do we need to go to that next level? And do we need to go to another level? And how do you feel about that?
mm. Well, if you're asking me what came across my mind the fastest to all this was we need less. We need less grip. We need less speed. We need to not be completely locked on the trigger. As soon as the trigger goes full throttle in the racing goes to crap, both behaviorally, through the equipment, all of it. So um, that's I may talk myself in a circle and say that's wrong, but that's been a long held belief, and I don't think that initial first snap thought in my brain, as you asked, come to light. As far as going to another level, I mean the things it's something like it's once you start meeting folks that you looked up to, like a Joel Johnson, or I remember Mike Blackstock saying things, or Bob Light when he was alive, you know, like what we do, and like I think Joel said it. It was like the guys that are racing stock are running faster than I ran in mod. Like I don't want to get in that fight. Like my era was this speed, and then consequently the same this equipment. So with that comes ability. Now when you look at some of these guys like a Chase Lemieux or Rivkin or Co-Defend, or these robots that run. I mean, love of God, I'll take Sam Isaacs and mod touring car. It doesn't get enough credit. Mod touring car, 5.0 motor with some turbo in it on a carpet track, whether it's an 8-second track or a 12-second track, whatever. It's still lefts and rights, and it's hauling ass. And this guy's going to run 5 minutes every week practicing. And when you look at the consistency number, it's 99 point something, run after run after run. So I look at that and say, it's a shit ton of talent, like for these guys. But at the same time, what does it take to do that? Why, and almost like, why can they do it that repeatably? They're good. They're very good. There's the answer. But how do we aspire to that? I think is the next question. And I think it's a lot harder when it's that gripped up and that fast. And I don't know how we slow it down. It's incumbent on tires. I mean, it starts there, and it's hard to sell slow. So I don't know. I mean, nature takes its course. Things organize. I think good organization and good race hosting. Scotty runs his one race a year, and it has a way, like the Snowbirds, to influence strongly the other 51 weeks. But tracks that really know the racers and do and organize things the right way have great 51 weeks. It does not have to be focused or centered around what does the Chili Bowl do, or what does this race do, or the other race do. So I think that's what we aspire to. I like the J Concept series that do an off road. I think that's a real healthy thing. It moves some things around and gets some focus on the racing and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, I'm pretty pleased with what I see. I mean, how great is it now? You can go on YouTube and watch a live race. I mean, I got the race in Germany 2 years ago, one of Scotty's ETS races. I was a kid in Candyland. It was awesome. So yeah, I think dirt oval. It again, back to tires. Like I'll use my bowling ball analogy. If I said right now, Sam, you want to go bowling? You probably say yeah, because you didn't have to stop and think, is my ball round? Do I have to resurface it? Do I have to re-clean it? Do I have to rebuild the grips? Is the lane going to be ready? What kind of lane are we going to get today? No, you just assume the ball's round, the lane's good, the beer will be cold, and we go. And the closer RC racing gets to that in a hosted environment with the parameters of rules and competitive spirit, that's when it's been its healthiest. When the tires don't wear out in 2 races, you can get a couple weekends on them. Those are the metrics where you see the huge turnouts. So that's all my drivel on that.
Sure. And a question that naturally got spawned there. I know I promised you one last one, but I have to ask this one too. Then
Well,
is
keep going.
when we're talking about the robot kind of guys, and you're talking about guys who you're on road touring car, for example, and you can run 99.x every single time they're on the racetrack. You're also a guy who, throughout the entirety of this podcast, you've preached work. Are those guys? Does that come natural in your opinion, or can somebody who, when they start right now, they couldn't bust a 50% consistency? Can that person work and get to that, or is it God's gift to that person?
Cruelly, it is some pieces of God's gift to that person. There's talent matters. It's not insurmountable. And the reality is with the talent and no work, no result. With the work and no talent, results do happen. Good results do happen. And the work becomes a 4-letter word in our conversations, in terms of no one wants to work. Well, that's what we're trying to get away from. But you got to work because you want to. And that's kind of the judge. And that's going back to that previous question. When the threshold's so high that it requires this much work to go do it, that's when the racing dwindles. And hosting the racing within that environment where it's not, the work is rewarded, but not mandatory to go have a good game of bowling, if you will. That's what makes it healthy. So, I would challenge somebody like Dustin. He's got his quasi tires. Like, okay, great. You made a tire, you got it, you got your feet wet, but make a tire that can run mostly competitive. Like I thought did a great job with this DE Racing, those sprinter tires they had. People lost their minds. Oh, they don't fit the rules. They don't this, that, or the other thing. They're cool. They're scale looking, and they work, and they last. And I don't understand why they didn't get more kudos for that. I was really disappointed for them, when I heard some of the back talk. But that's more what we need. It's if it slows it down but keeps it controllable and you still have to lift, absolutely. So yeah, it's work, but you got to find it because you want it. Like right now, I'm sick with my touring car. I mean, I'm 3/10 off. I think some of those tenths is a speed controller. I hope so, but usually you can luck in the one fast lap. But I want to figure out how to get at least into that threshold of being towards the A main. I don't need to win the thing. I just want to solve the puzzle, if you will, or at least know how to solve it.
All right, man. Well, I have 4 questions, quick hitters. These are quick hitters. I have 4 questions that I ask every guest at the end of the show. Through my research, you run the number 4.
Yep.
Why?
Stolen from Brian Burkhart. So if you remember, I said he lent me a Bellyacre to start dirt oval racing. The numbers before that were all over the place, but he lent me that car, and I started racing with that 4 on it, and it was that color, and it was like a white scheme as it was. For those in the New York area know the Goey car at the time, the dirt modified. So it come off that car, the 4. Jake Floor printed those decals. I'll tell you how long he printed it. Finally, the black ink assignment on the printer wouldn't work because it was 20 years old at the time. Like the program that he wrote for the 4 wouldn't push to the printer anymore because it didn't recognize the black ink assignment. He's like, I haven't had that printer for 20 years. So, yeah, that's it. There's no real other thing other than I stole it and I just kept using it. So
awesome. I love it. Cool. So yeah, it's just so interesting to hear everybody. Like, some people have like it's so meaningful to them, it's so important, and then some people it's like,
I just
you
thought
know,
I thought that car was so cool. Like when I saw it when he first brought it, I'm like, "You're gonna let me run this car?" And he was like, "Yeah, why?" And I'm like, and I'm like, "Well, thanks." Like I just, the whole car was just so cool, and the number was cool, and the colors were cool, and I didn't. He said this. We talked about this over the years. He's like, "You weren't supposed to keep the damn number." I was like, "Well, I didn't know." And literally, we went 20 some odd years before he brought this up. And I said, "Berkey," I said, "you always ran a 16 car." "Yeah, but that was my outside number." So I didn't know Berkey had an inside number and an outside number, but so that's how it started.
fair enough. Cool. Question number 2. What is one tech tip or piece of knowledge that every racer should know?
Oh Jesus! And keep it simple. I mean, it's going to be this, and I'll give you the link to find it on Amazon. But the year Tyler won, Tyler Hoeks won his first Chili Bowl. I'm scaling his car for him every 20 minutes. It seemed like coached him up. We got him right. He wins the race. So after the race was over, for the lowly sum of $25, I had Amazon send him 2 scales to his house. And learning to use those scales is the most important gain if you're going to run oval, to get yourself out of trouble, and then so start applying your thinking. And Tyler even bemoaned it, like, "I don't need scales. All for guys would laugh at me, XYZ things, whatever." But when he was off a cliff a month before this year's Chili Bowl, and the text, as I just, "Tyler, we're going to make it vanilla. Get your scales out." "Oh, I haven't used them yet." "You're going to use them, and we'll get it square." So to make it simple, I'll give you the link for the scales. Ride heights level, front weight of the tires equal. Your car will almost always drive honestly, as long as tires or something else isn't wrong with it, like a bent hinge pin or things of that nature. So that's my tech tip. Get these skills, learn how to use them, and apply yourself.
Excellent. And then what is one RC race that every racer should attend?
Oh, man. One RC race everyone should attend. Gosh, they're all. You can't pick a favorite kid. I mean, they're all different in their own ways. I like the mid-size races anymore. I mean, Soda City was the on-road track that I ran in South Carolina before I moved here to Texas, and they had their summer sizzler. You know what's great about that race? On Saturday, around 4 o'clock or so, part of your entry fee buys a big barbecue dinner. Well, whenever the barbecue dinner shows up, we stop the race program and we have an hour or so to eat dinner together. There's no practicing, there's nothing. Everybody just stops and we eat dinner. I loved it. Old me would have been losing his shit. This track's going to hell. What are we doing? Can I practice? I don't want to eat. I want to practice. No, and it's the first, and honestly, the first year I was like, I'm like, do we really not get to practice? Nope. Everybody eats. It was great. It really, I miss the times where we used to hang out at the side of the track to watch the A mains. Now everybody's trying to get home when the A mains are being run. I remember back in the day, it was like, it's 4 or 5 deep around the track. That is why you worked to be on that stage, and how cool it was. Everybody's watching, right? So um, I think that's the answer. It's the mid-size races that your local clubs are putting on when they do. I heard of a race called the beans and cornbread after the Chili Bowl race. I'm like, that's got to be a good race. Like it says it right in the name. Like you're going to go get beans and cornbread. This is going to be a good time. So those would be the ones I would say are your must. If you're not doing it, those are races you should want to attend.
Awesome. All right, last one. Give me 3 people who you think should be the next guest on the podcast.
Ooh. Well, I think I think if you're looking dirt oval oriented, Nick Rank.
Okay.
I mean, first of all, you gotta have he's got to have a camera to walk around because he literally has a museum of dirt oval cars, especially Customworks stuff. And he could speak to a lot of the history, like 2000s backwards, 90s especially. So that is definitely one person for sure. Um, in terms of visual content and a history side of it. Um, Trying to think of the next one. Do we stay dirt oval only, or should we just stick with dirt oval? Or
So that is kind of what we've based Scale Labs around, has been dirt oval, but I am willing, definitely for podcast episodes, I'm absolutely willing to step out of that a little bit if we can have it, whoever it may be. So yes.
I mean, here's somebody who can give you a lot of perspective is Jamie Tennies.
Okay.
I mean, he's been around a long time. He's raced for a long time. I mean, he has arguably one of the nicest facilities in the country. They race dirt oval. They race off road. I mean, the amount of things you will learn about Jamie and about RC racing should be pretty deep, um, for sure. And I would say another one that would, if you can get him to talk or even pick up the phone, would be Dieter. Dieter's always a good one. He's going to know a ton of the backstories, and this is again putting the racing back towards the 2000s and backwards. Maybe not the current ones. Um, I think a person that would be interesting just from a racing perspective, and maybe he isn't or isn't in the mood, would be Paul Lemieux. Um, there's somebody who grew up as a kid racer, and life matured him, and he's working in racing now. He's got a son who's hot time racer. So there's a lot of angles there to visit Paul with, not only from his upbringing in racing. I mean, him and Scotty, and his relationship with Scotty and his relationship with Dieter are like two fathers. So there's a lot of tie in there. But those are some other, and Paul ran dirt oval. I mean, Paul worked for Customworks for 2 years. Um, but I'm trying to think of another. You can't get Sherburne on the phone. That would be a hard one. Um, I might have to come back to you if you need another name. Not to run all your I was going to say film out of your camera, but all your
That's
drive
fair.
disk space, whatever your cloud space, wherever you're putting
Yeah,
it.
it's all going to the cloud. Cool, man.
Well,
Arnie, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you. This has been circled on my list since Nathan sent your number over, and I cannot tell you how thankful I am for your time. I can't tell you how thankful I think I speak for most people in the hobby, for your brain and how special you are, and what an innovator you are, and what a guiding light you've been for the entire industry, for
well,
as long as you've been around.
those are humbling words, Sam. I appreciate hearing them. I mean, it's folks like you that are making the next things happen in RC. One, by bringing attention to it. Two, circulating where all it's been, because there seems to be a thirst for what did happen in some of these things. And then, where's it going? It gets that attention through you folks. So, and I appreciate that. It is very humbling to hear the kind words you've said, and having like the "I'm not worthy" type music playing in my head from Wayne's World. But thank you to see me for my accomplishments, not necessarily my attitude at the track. So
Absolutely. Well, thank you, and I appreciate it as well. And all right, guys. Well, that has been another episode of the Scale Labs RC podcast, and we will see you guys on the next one. This has been Arnie Fie. My name's Sam Johnson, and I appreciate you guys. Have a good one.